The DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro is finally here, and this is a really exciting release. There are 11 new features that I think you should know about this camera in comparison to the Osmo Action 4. You can see the side-by-side comparison right now, in fact. But 3 of those features, I think, are absolute game changers, and they are reasons why I would choose the Action 5 over any other action camera. We'll get into it later on in this video. Before we get started, let me disclose that this video is not sponsored by DJI. They did not pay me to say anything. No one is paying me to say anything. So this video is actually supported by you guys. So if you find this video helpful, please consider using my affiliate links below to help support the channel. But anyway, I use action cameras to film travel vlogs on my second channel, Gemini Discover. And so I always want to know, what's the latest action camera? And is it any better than the one that I'm currently using? So I'm testing these cameras out out of genuine interest, and I really do think that the Action 5 Pro might be my new favorite action camera. So the first thing you should know about the new Osmo Action 5 Pro is that it comes with a next generation 1/1.3 inch sensor. It's the same sensor that you find in the Osmo Action 4, or the same size anyway, not exactly the same sensor. But this next generation sensor basically means that the Osmo Action 5 has expanded dynamic range. 13.5 stops to be exact. The Action 5's overall brightness is definitely more balanced compared to the Action 4, which tends to have more blown out highlights. Even when shooting in normal color, there's an HDR-like effect on the Action 5 image quality, which can look nice in harsh lighting conditions. However, it can also make your image look a little fake at times, which some of you may not like. So I don't know how they're enabling this HDR-like effect in normal color mode, but it would be nice to have an option to tone it down. So HDR, or high dynamic range color, is something that was on previous Osmo Action cameras, but on the Action 4 it was removed. I believe it's also not on the 3, but correct me if I'm wrong. But now in the Action 5, DJI brought back HDR mode. Specifically, it's HLG, or Hybrid Log Gamma HDR, which has expanded color ranges and it's just higher quality HDR than standard HDR. So this can be a good color profile to use if you're shooting in high contrast lighting scenarios. Right now we're kind of dipping in and out of them, so this is not exactly the best case scenario to necessarily be using HDR, but I'll show you some other samples. The HLG HDR image quality looks pretty good, and you have more control over how exaggerated the HDR effect is, because you typically need to color grade that footage in post-production. Now, speaking of color grading, the Osmo Action 5 still offers the D-Log-M color profile, but with one change. On the camera, you can now enable color recovery, which displays the footage in camera with color added, so you can get an idea of what your color graded footage will look like. But the output is still flat, so you do have to color grade that footage in post-production. This next new feature is probably one of the most requested new features that people want to see in action cameras these days. In fact, I think it's the most requested feature, and that is low light performance. It is about 20 minutes after sunset, and by we, I mean me and Leo. Because when you've got a newborn, it's a little hard to do these low light tests without them, so he's out here with me. The Action 5's low light image quality is quite a bit brighter than the Action 4's, and this is just shooting in normal video mode. Here's what it looks like when shooting in HLG HDR on the Action 5 at night. The Action 5 also does away with the low light image enhancement mode that was found on the Action 4, and instead has a new super night shooting mode, which sets a lot of the parameters automatically. And here's what that footage looks like straight out of camera. Personally, I think it looks a little over-sharpened and just lower quality. So I think it's best to shoot low light in normal video mode, where you can have more control over your settings. The next new feature is photography related, and that is the option to shoot in up to 40 megapixel photos on the Osmo Action 5. So on the Osmo Action 4, you can only shoot 9, 10 megapixel size photos. On the Action 5, you still can shoot in 9 or 10 megapixel size photos, but you can also get a 40 megapixel photo if you want. That is only available in the 4:3 aspect ratio. If you do 16:9, I think it's 36 megapixels, but still, that is a significantly bigger image than what you were getting on the Osmo Action 4 for photography. Now, in addition to a brand new sensor on the Osmo Action 5 Pro, we also get a brand new chip. And this chip enables a couple of new features in particular. The first one being subject tracking. So this is a new shooting mode in the Osmo Action 5, and if you have it selected, then you have this little box now that forms around the subject. Oh, that is cool. You can actually see the subject tracking on the front-facing screen as well. Let's test out this subject tracking mode. So I can see in the front-facing screen that it is indeed tracking me as I move around. Now, obviously, this camera is not a gimbal, so if I move out of frame, the camera isn't going to move with me, but as long as I stay in the frame, it's supposedly going to be tracking me. And we'll take a look at the final result later to see if I indeed stay centered. When shooting in this mode, image cropping happens automatically in camera. You don't have to run it through an app or any kind of post-processing software. You can also choose to have the subject cropping in horizontal or vertical aspect ratio, but the resolution is currently limited to 2.7K 60 frames per second. The next new feature is one of those game-changing features that might sway you to switch over to this camera if you're not already convinced. And that is thanks to the new processor and also the new battery that is shipping with the Osmo Action 5 Pro. So it's improved battery life, but by a huge margin. So when I've done these action camera tests in the past, I am lucky if I get even 90 minutes of continuous recording out of an action camera when shooting in 4K 30 frames per second or 4K 60. That's usually the standard. But now, with the Osmo Action 5 Pro and the new processor and the new battery, I'm able to get significantly more battery life. Like, it's insane. So I did several battery life tests just to make sure that the numbers I was getting weren't a fluke. Each time I got roughly 4 hours of battery life on the Osmo Action 5 when using this new battery. I also got no overheating. The biggest problem you'll run into when filming with this camera continuously is running out of storage space. This new battery is backwards compatible, so you can use it with the Osmo Action 4, the Osmo Action 3, and you can also use those older batteries with the Osmo Action 5. But overall, I am so pleased with this new battery life. Like, it's to the point where if I'm out filming a video, like typically I don't film longer than an hour of total content at a time. So it's just made me more carefree. Like, I don't have to be so paranoid about making sure that my camera is always turned off if I'm not using it. So it's just more peace of mind that's allowed me to be a lot more creative when I'm out filming with this camera. The next new feature is also a game changer, but I will need an assistant to properly demonstrate it for you. So the next notable feature has to do with the DJI Mic 2 transmitter. So on the Osmo Action 4, you're able to connect one microphone, but now on the Osmo Action 5 Pro, you're able to connect two microphones simultaneously. So I've got one microphone. The other microphone is...
So let's see if this one works. It should work hassle-free. I'm backtracking over here. I should be able to keep talking, and she should be able to talk too.
Yeah, so on that front-facing screen, I see the microphone levels going back and forth for the two mics, so we can verify that they are indeed connected and they are recording audio.
If indeed this works and it's a quality connection, then that's a big win if it's hassle-free, because such things have always had a certain amount of hassle to them.
It is pretty hassle-free because you don't need the receiver anymore. You can just use the Bluetooth connection, and once you've paired the two mics, they automatically connect and they do it right away. So, very nice feature. And if you want to...
I also notice it's giving me feedback if you're recording. It like buzzes when the camera starts recording, which is a great feature.
It's got that vibration, and you're able to do internal recording on the transmitters, which I've noticed is something that you can't do if you have these microphones connected to other cameras. The next new feature is a minor physical change to the Osmo Action 5 Pro. So it still has the dual facing touchscreens, one in the front and one in the back, but both of those touchscreens are now quite a bit brighter compared to the Osmo Action 4. So that makes it a lot easier to see your subject or see what you're filming or review your footage on the camera if you're shooting out in bright lighting. I will say though that at times it can make your footage look a lot better than it actually is. So you still want to make sure to review that footage on a bigger screen before you lock in your settings. But yeah, it's really nice having brighter displays. The other thing about that front-facing screen, it is still a touch screen, which is really great. I can control my settings when I'm in front of the camera, but that front-facing screen is now always on, because on the Osmo Action 4, like right now, I would have to tap and swipe up to tell the camera which display I want to be activated. But now the front and back facing screens on the Osmo Action 5 are always on. Next up is an improvement in waterproofing. So without using a dive case or an underwater housing, you can take the Osmo Action 5 up to 20 meters underwater, which is a slight improvement. I think it's 18 meters on the Osmo Action 4. So not a big improvement from model to model, but overall, both of these cameras still have the deepest depth, waterproofing depth compared to the other action cameras on the market right now. The next new feature is a first for any action camera, which is kind of crazy to think about, but that is a built-in pressure gauge. So it can display your depth and your altitude, which, again, I don't really dive. I have an issue with not being able to release the pressure in my ears, so it's not something that I personally would find useful. But if you do dive or go to great depths with this camera, then that's something that you might really enjoy having on your camera. The Action 5 still does not have built-in GPS. That's something that you can add if you buy another accessory. And because of that new pressure gauge, there is now an automatic start and stop recording based on if the camera is in the water. So again, not really a feature that I personally would use, but for those of you who are water-loving enthusiasts or professionals, then that might be a really cool feature for you. And the final new feature on the Osmo Action 5 Pro that I think is notable, game-changing even, is the inclusion of built-in recording. This is something that I've already taken advantage of several times by accident, where I had a memory card in my camera, it filled up, camera wanted to stop recording, but it actually alerted me and it asked me if I wanted to switch over to the internal recording instead. So it does interrupt your recording if that happens, but still, I didn't have to run home and find a new memory card or just give up on filming for the day. Because of that internal recording, I managed to film my video. So huge, huge, huge feature, something that I've wanted to see on pretty much every camera out there. The only other ones that have it that I know of are phones. So yeah, this feature alone would convert me over to the Osmo Action 5 Pro. So in conclusion, I think this is a really strong release from DJI. These are 11 new features. I think there are even a few more, but these are the ones that I thought were the most noteworthy. The three that I'm the most excited for that I mentioned so far are the built-in internal recording, extended battery life, and, oh yes, the dual microphone attachment. So those are three things that I will be taking heavy advantage of with this camera. I already have. Again, I think that they're game changers. A few things that are still lacking on this camera that could be improved. I can't think of too many, but one could be the GPS. If you want GPS, you have to pay a little bit extra for an accessory to add that, so it would be nice to have that included in the camera. Oh, and mounting options. If you want to add accessories via a cold shoe, if you want to add a microphone that is not a Bluetooth wireless microphone, namely the DJI Mic 2, then that is something that's rather difficult to do on the Action 5 Pro and the Action 4. So those are a few things that could be improved, but overall, I'm quite happy with this Action 5 Pro so far. Love the new features, love the quality that I'm seeing and I'm hearing. You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below, based on what you've seen in this video. I will also be doing a settings guide to the Action 5 Pro, plus a big comparison between the Action 5, the Action 4, the GoPro Hero 13 Black, and the Insta360 Ace Pro to determine which of these is the best action camera. So stay tuned for those videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.